Have you ever pondered upon the cruel irony of war, where we kill to live and live to kill? This unsettling question presents a stark reality of our world that often remains unacknowledged. It's a paradox that's been with us since the dawn of civilization. War, a concept so deeply ingrained in our societies, where we sacrifice lives to protect life itself. We rally behind flags, driven by the belief that our survival depends on the destruction of the other. Yet amidst the smoke and rubble, the other often turns out to be just another reflection of ourselves. Humans caught in the crossfire of ideologies and power struggles. This paradox, this cruel irony, is not a product of modern times. It has been a part of the human narrative ever since we started forming tribes and building walls. The question remains, why? What fuels this cycle of violence and retribution? War, a paradox that has shaped the course of humanity since the dawn of time. War, like a deadly disease, doesn't just appear out of nowhere. It has roots, causes, and catalysts. It's an intricate web of circumstances and decisions woven together across time and space. Let's start with territorial disputes. History is riddled with such instances, from ancient Rome's expansionist ambitions to the 20th century India-Pakistan partition. Land, with its resources and strategic advantages, has always been a prized possession, often leading to bloody conflicts. Then there are economic interests. Wars have been fought over spices, oil, gold, and more. The desire for wealth and resources can push nations into devastating conflicts. Think of the Opium Wars in the 19th century, where Britain clashed with China to protect its lucrative opium trade. Next, we have ideological differences. These are the battles of ideas, cultures, and beliefs. The Cold War, a tense standoff between the capitalist West and the communist East, was a prime example of this. No bullets were fired, no cities were bombed, but the threat of war loomed large for decades. Lastly, let's not forget power struggles. The desire to dominate, to control, to wield power over others has been a catalyst for war throughout the ages. The world wars were, in many ways, power struggles on a global scale, a deadly contest between nations vying for supremacy. But it's essential to remember that these are not isolated causes. They often intertwine and interact, creating a complex and volatile mix. A territorial dispute can spark an economic conflict. Ideological differences can fuel power struggles. Understanding this interconnectedness is crucial, so why delve into these grim details? Why dissect the causes of war with such precision? Because knowledge is power. By understanding the roots of conflict, we can better anticipate and prevent future wars. By acknowledging the complexity of these issues, we can strive for solutions that address the root causes, not just the symptoms. Understanding the causes of war is the first step towards preventing it. Because, at the end of the day, isn't that what we all want? A world where conflicts are resolved not on the battlefield, but at the negotiating table. Once the drums of war start beating, a chain reaction is set off, affecting all aspects of life. This is the domino effect of war, a cascade of consequences that spread far and wide, impacting not just the immediate players, but reaching to the corners of the globe. It's like a stone thrown into a pond. The ripples spread in all directions, touching everything in their path. Let's consider first the direct effects of war. The most obvious is the human cost. Lives are lost, families are torn apart, communities are destroyed. But the impacts are not just physical, there are psychological effects too. Post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, anxiety. These are the unseen wounds that soldiers and civilians carry long after the guns have fallen silent. Then there's the economic impact. Wars are expensive, and the financial burden can cripple economies for generations. Infrastructure is destroyed, trade is disrupted, and resources are diverted away from essential services like education and healthcare. But the effects of war don't stop at the borders of the countries involved. They ripple outwards, creating waves of refugees who flee the conflict, seeking safety in other countries. This puts pressure on these host nations, straining resources and sometimes causing social tensions. And let's not forget the environmental impact. War can lead to the destruction of natural habitats, pollution of water sources, and contribute to climate change through the release of greenhouse gases. These effects permeate all levels of society. They shape politics, influence culture, and affect the way we view the world and each other. Even when peace is eventually restored, the echoes of war can still be heard, shaping the future in ways we may not even realize. But it's not all doom and gloom. Understanding these effects is the first step towards prevention. By acknowledging the wide-reaching impacts of war, we can work towards solutions that prevent conflict, promote peace, and protect our shared world. The repercussions of war go beyond the battlefield, seeping into the fabric of societies, leaving indelible scars. Beneath the surface of war lie hidden dimensions that often go unnoticed. As we delve deeper into the complexities of conflict, we encounter elements that are not always visible on the battlefield, but whose influence is no less significant. One such element is the role of propaganda. Propaganda is not just a tool for swaying public opinion, it's a mechanism of war itself. It's used to dehumanize the enemy, to justify actions, and to rally support. It shapes narratives, casting one side as the hero and the other as the villain. Ultimately, propaganda is about control over minds, hearts, and in the end, actions. Then, there's the military-industrial complex, a term that echoes ominously from the past. This refers to the intertwined relationship between a nation's military and the industries that supply it. It's not just about producing weapons for a war, it's about creating a demand for those weapons. It's about economies built around conflict, where peace can ironically seem like a threat to prosperity. But perhaps the most insidious facet of war is its use as a political tool. War can be a convenient diversion, a way to shift focus from domestic issues, or a means to consolidate power. It's a grim chess game where the pawns are real people and the stakes are measured in human lives. And let's not forget about war profiteering. This is the dark underbelly of conflict where individuals and corporations exploit chaos for financial gain. It's about supplying arms, rebuilding shattered infrastructures, and capitalizing on resources in conflict zones. War profiteers thrive on conflict, their fortunes rising with the smoke from the battleground. But why does all this matter? Because understanding these hidden dimensions helps us see war for what it truly is. It's not a simple case of good versus evil or us versus them. It's a tangled web of interests, ideologies, and power plays. It's about recognizing that the drums of war are often beaten by hands far removed from the battlefield. It's about acknowledging that wars are fought not just on the front lines, but in boardrooms, on trading floors, and in the corridors of power. And most importantly, it's about realizing that preventing war is not just about diplomacy and disarmament. It's about challenging the narratives that justify war, breaking the cycle of economies dependent on conflict, and holding accountable those who profit from the suffering of others. These are the hidden facets of war. They're uncomfortable truths, but by bringing them into the light, we can begin to challenge the systems that perpetuate conflict. War is not just a clash of armies, it is a complex web of interests, ideologies, and power plays. And understanding this complexity is the first step towards a world where peace is not just an ideal, but a reality. History, they say, is the greatest teacher. But have we truly learned from our past wars? Let's journey back to some of the most impactful wars in history. We'll start with the First World War, a devastating event that was meant to be the war to end all wars, yet it was followed by another even more catastrophic war, World War II, just 2 decades later. These wars taught us that peace cannot be achieved through violence and that war only leads to more war. Moving on, the Vietnam War serves as another poignant lesson. It highlighted the role of ideology in sparking conflicts and the futile nature of fighting such wars. Despite the colossal loss of lives and resources, the war ended with Vietnam unified under the very ideology the war was fought to suppress. The Cold War, a different type of conflict, was a war of ideologies fought not with bullets and bombs, but with words and propaganda. It demonstrated that even without active combat, war can still inflict immense psychological and economic damage. Fast forward to more recent times, the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan underscore the complexities of modern warfare. They remind us that the ripple effects of war can last for generations, breeding resentment and sparking new conflicts. But history also shows us that peace is attainable. The end of apartheid in South Africa, the peaceful dissolution of the Soviet Union, and the Good Friday Agreement in Northern Ireland are all examples of conflicts resolved not through war, but through dialogue and understanding. From these lessons, it's clear that war is not a solution, but a problem itself. It destroys lives, disrupts societies, and sows seeds for future conflicts. Peace, on the other hand, is a product of understanding, dialogue, and mutual respect. So as we look to the future, we must remember these lessons. We must strive to resolve our differences peacefully, recognizing that the cost of war is too high and the benefits of peace too precious to ignore. We need to learn from our past, not repeat it. The path to peace is not easy, but it is a journey we must undertake. It is a journey that begins with the recognition that every life is valuable and that the cost of conflict is too high. It is a journey that demands our utmost commitment, our deepest understanding, and our unwavering dedication. To prevent wars, we must first understand the root causes of conflict. These may include territorial disputes, economic imbalances, political ideologies, or religious beliefs. By understanding these triggers, we can work towards mitigating them through diplomacy and negotiation. Diplomacy, the art of dealing with people in a sensitive and tactful way, is often the first line of defense against conflict. It involves dialogue, negotiation, and compromise. It calls for the ability to see the world from another's perspective, to understand their fears, their hopes, their dreams. It is about finding common ground and working towards a mutually beneficial resolution. International cooperation is another key to preventing wars. This can take many forms, from economic partnerships and cultural exchanges to joint scientific research and humanitarian aid. It is about fostering a sense of global community, a shared understanding that we are all interconnected, that what affects one affects us all. Disarmament, the reduction or elimination of weapons, is also crucial. It is not just about reducing the number of weapons, but also about reducing the desire to use them. This involves building trust, promoting transparency, and creating a culture of peace. Education plays a pivotal role too. It is through education that we can foster a culture of peace. By teaching our children about the horrors of war, the value of peace, and the importance of understanding and empathy, we can help them become ambassadors of peace. The United Nations and other international organizations play a pivotal role in maintaining peace. They provide a platform for dialogue, mediate disputes, and coordinate humanitarian aid. They remind us that we are part of a global community, that our actions have global repercussions. The path to peace starts with understanding, empathy, and dialogue. It is a path that requires courage, patience, and perseverance. But it is a path worth taking, for the sake of our future and the future of our planet. In our journey today, we have traversed the landscape of war, exploring its causes, effects, and the hidden facets beneath its surface. We delved into the genesis of conflict, understanding that in many instances, it's born from a combustible mix of economic disparity, political instability, and social unrest. From there, we witnessed how these isolated skirmishes could snowball into a domino effect, escalating into full-blown warfare that engulfs nations and even continents. We peeled back the layers to reveal the hidden facets of war, the unseen consequences that ripple outwards, affecting not just the battlefield, but also the home front. We saw how war distorts economies, disrupts societies, and decimates environments, leaving scars that can take generations to heal. From the ashes of these conflicts, we unearthed lessons from history, reminders of the cost of war and the value of peace. We remembered the millions of lives lost, the cities reduced to rubble, and the societies torn asunder. But we also found glimmers of hope, stories of resilience and reconciliation, of nations rising from the ruins to rebuild and renew. And finally, we set foot on the road to peace, exploring the steps we can take to prevent war and promote harmony. We discussed the roles of diplomacy, education, and economic equality in mitigating conflict, and the necessity of a global commitment to peace. In the end, it is up to us, the inhabitants of this planet, to choose between war and peace, destruction and development, death and life. Our choices determine our future, shaping the world we pass on to the next generation. So let's choose wisely for the sake of our children, for the sake of our world, and for the sake of humanity.